Hey, yo, what is going on, guys? Got a brand new episode of Buy or Bust for you guys today. Today, we're going to be going over the brand new Season Pass and Super Premium Season Pass cards, Zombie, Scarlet Witch, and Headpool. We're going to be breaking down what they all do, as well as what they look like in-game, the good, the bad, the key counters and synergies for these cards, as well as 2 individual decks for both of them as well. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So in case you guys did not know, the Zombie Scarlet Witch is the brand new Season Pass card, which does have the ability, after you play a card here, Horde +2. This is what the Zombie Horde is in-game. It is a kind of like token card that spawns at another location opposite of the card you played that just added power to the Horde. If there's no Horde on the board already, it goes to a different location than a card you just played. So like if you play a card onto Zombie Scarlet Witch, which this is what that looks like in game, it then spawns the Horde on one of the other 2 locations. Whereas if there is already a Horde on the board, this just gives power to where the Horde is each time you play a card onto Scarlet Witch. So, you know, Zombie Horde's already on the board. So whenever you play the Kitty Pryde, as you saw in that animation there, then it gets that +2 power onto where it is at already. But let's say it's not Zombie Scarlet Witch. Let's say you play one of the other cards later releasing this season. Then it'll spawn the Horde at a different location than where you just played that card. The next card we do have is going to be Headpool. Headpool is a super premium Season Pass card as well as a regular Series 5 release card. They did this the same way with Sparky this past season, where you can actually spend tokens to be able to get it, and it's not just locked behind the paywall like Zombie Scarlet Witch is going to be. And of course, Headpool has the ability, when this is destroyed, return it to your hand, give the cards in your hand, all the cards in your hand, +1 power. This is what that looks like in game. So that means once Headpool is destroyed and then returns to its hand, it is in the hand, and then all the cards get the power added to it, which, of course, Zombie Headpool does also get that instead. Not Zombie Headpool, but Headpool also gets that power onto itself. So it's not just other cards in hand, it is all cards in hand do get the power from Headpool being destroyed. Moving on to the key synergies we have for Zombie Scarlet Witch. One of the first key synergies we do have, I say, is Merlin. Because the cool thing about Merlin is you play a card onto Zombie Scarlet Witch. That's when she gives the Horde +2. Using it with spells such as Merlin, enable you to be able to not take up board space as well, which, you know, board space can be an issue. You've seen this with like a Hope Summers. You've seen this with Angela. You've seen it with those kind of style of decks when it comes to being able to maximize getting that extra energy with Hope Summers. This is, of course, to get extra power onto your Horde itself. Of course, not every single one of these spells is going to be the most useful. Of course, you know, Polymorph and Once in Future, you're going to want to have other cards in that lane in order to get better value out of those, opposed to just regularly playing those out, because then you won't be able to necessarily get all of that Zombie Scarlet Witch value you're really wanting. Next, of course, we have Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, I'm thinking of some of those bounce cards. Kitty Pryde, you, of course, have, like I said, like the Hope Summers. You have, like, an Angela card you're playing repeatedly into the Zombie Scarlet Witch lane. Of course, it is not clogging your board because they return back to your hand. Also with Kitty Pryde, I think of like an Elsa Bloodstone in order to maximize, because you're playing so many cards into that Zombie Scarlet Witch lane. And then, of course, we do have Zombie Giant Man. Zombie Giant Man is an on reveal. Add, I believe it is 1 or 2 power to the Horde, and then gain the power that the Horde has onto Zombie Giant Man as well. So if you've been able to get this tempo out the right way and buff up your Horde repeatedly by playing cards onto your Zombie Scarlet Witch, your Zombie Giant Man has a lot of potential to scale as well as little movers such as like a Jeff, Silk, Mercury, Rocket, and Groot. This is going to be another key card that can also work well with Zombie Scarlet Witch. I think that's also a counter card potentially too, because your opponent's repeatedly going to be playing into that lane. So keep that in mind. I don't have it as one of my focal ones, such as like a Red Guardian. It has a 2 base power on your Zombie Scarlet Witch, so it is a pretty easy Red Guardian target. So that's just something to keep in mind. The way you set up your board, that your Red Guardian is relevant, especially after the reversions. Or the reverts to the cards from the OTA. Would not be surprised if you continue to see more Red Guardian, especially this next week. Stardust, if you do not have any of the Horde on the board just yet, Stardust makes it so it doesn't spawn. So it's just simple as that. Stardust makes it so, you know, Cards can only be played or moved, so you cannot have created cards added to the board, and the Horde is a created card. It is a token card, so unfortunately it would not work with Stardust. And then Shadow King, getting the extra power onto the Horde itself is not a power that is permanent. This is a power that can just be Shadow Kinged. So that is kind of just unfortunate there for you. Shadow King, I think, will continue to be running amok, especially this next season. So definitely keep that in mind. So the first thing I want to say is Deadpool. You know, Deadpool and Headpool, it just makes sense for them just to, you know, go together. There's going to be instances where you are destroying Deadpool before you destroy Headpool. In order to get that power onto Deadpool in your hand before you play Deadpool out again. Kind of like you kind of want to tempo, like, or think about the way you used to play Nova when it comes to like a Deadpool or it comes to like a Bucky and stuff too. You would have it, the second card destroyed, so that when Bucky went from just Bucky to the Winter Soldier then got that extra power onto itself, with Nova being destroyed second. So order is going to matter with Headpool, especially with these cards returning to your hand. Next, I'm thinking of Killmonger. Killmonger, of course, being able to destroy Headpool. Killmonger, Deathlock, Venom, Carnage are all cards that can destroy Headpool to be able to get that value for you. Of course, Killmonger is global once again, so Headpool can be on a completely different lane, and you can have Killmonger to be able to hit it, you know, across the board. And then I was also thinking Death, you know, destroying Headpool over and over and over again. You're destroying Deadpool over and over and over again. These are cards that return back to your hand, so there's cards that you can destroy repeatedly, so you're not just locked into destroying it one time. So you think of destroy, think of a destroy package, think of just classic kind of destroy. Headpool, I'm kind of, you know, putting in there. I don't think that's the only home for Headpool. I think there's going to be some other variety of different homes. But, of course, you do have to destroy this card to get value. Now, when we talk about the counters for Headpool, of course, Red Guardian is another key counter for Headpool, of course. That is when you just have Headpool still on the board. So this card does have a lower power point. So if you're trying to save this for a turn 3 kind of play, Red Guardian can just really target Headpool pretty easily. So just keep that in mind when you are playing your Headpool as well. Armor, you know, it's a destroy card. If this card can't be destroyed, you don't really get any value from this card. So, you know, just then and there, Armor just kind of nukes it. And then Shadow King either hitting Headpool or hitting the cards that Headpool has, you know, adjusted or gotten value to by being destroyed. Shadow King, of course, does counter that. Cosmo into the Headpool lane as well. Some of those are just kind of like key cards that kind of counter what's going on. You're playing destroy. You kind of, I think, understand a general idea of what destroy cards get countered by. Next, moving on to the good for Zombie Scarlet Witch over here. The Zombie Scarlet Witch, it does introduce a brand new archetype. You have the Horde being a brand new style of play, being added to the game with the new season, the new zombie season, getting some value that way, which is pretty cool. Something good to note. It's a 3 cost, so it is still fairly easy to play out. You're not really losing much tempo-wise. I mean, it's not a crazy power point, so that's where you would be losing tempo, it being a 3-2. But, you know, you're setting stuff up for later, and it's really just an enabler for all the Horde stuff. The ability can be used multiple times in the same turn to be able to get value onto the Horde. And there's a variety of different enablers for that as well. Like I said, with the skills from Merlin, movers, like the small move package, kind of, you know, like that Silk, Mercury, Jaff, you know, Rocket and Groot, Nocturne are a couple there, bouncers, talking like Kitty Pryde or cards that go with bouncers, like that Angela, potentially like a Bishop, you know, Elsa, like cards like that, of course, that do work well with the Zombie Scarlet Witch as well, too. Hope Summers kind of works in the same similar way. But the bad when it comes to good old Scarlet Witch is going to be cards do have to be played onto her lane. So that does make it a little bit predictable where your opponent knows you're going to be playing stuff onto that lane, so they can play around you playing cards onto that lane. The Horde does, like I say, go to a random location, not where Zombie Scarlet Witch is, so it's one of the other 2 locations, so you do need to keep that in mind. It is random. And then, of course, low base power being a 3-2, being able to be an easy target for Red Guardian. You can lose some of that tempo trying to just set this up as one of those combo pieces. And then the counters are fairly popular right now, whether that is a Shadow King, whether that is a Red Guardian. There probably is going to be more Cosmic Ghost Rider, going to be more Stardust this next week. You know, people are going to be wanting to kick over these sandcastles. Now, talking about the good for Headpool, it's a 1 cost, so it's very great for something just to play out on tempo or be able to set this up later for other combo pieces. Like, you don't have to play this out in turn 1. You don't have to play it out on turn 2, but of course, like turn 3, 4, and 5, like it's going to vary about like how many times you destroy it, like per game. Like sometimes you're going to have the perfect curve to be able to do this, sometimes you're not. But you're going to want to destroy cards nonetheless. The entire hand does get buffed as well, which is something that's really solid about Headpool, including Headpool itself. So that's some power your opponent does have to, keep in mind every single time you destroy Headpool. Of course, your opponent will see what Headpool is on the board. That power kind of helps them understand, how many times it has been buffed originally. But they have to keep in mind what other cards you also had in your hand and account for that when they go into their next plays. And it can be, destroyed multiple times. It's not locked into just being destroyed one time. Now, the bad for Headpool over here, it does have to be destroyed. So you have to have cards that destroy this in order to get value from it. It is a low base power if it is left on the board, meaning it is a really easy Red Guardian target with it only having 1 power. It's a predictable lane. Also, if it is left on the board, your opponent knows you're going to be playing something to try and destroy it or something to kind of like set up what's about to happen with Headpool. So they can kind of just like keep that in mind when it comes to being able to play around this. And, it's a fairly easy archetype to counter. Destroy in general has a large variety of different counters, so just keep that in mind. It may not be the best archetype to play, but this card does add some really extra value to those styles of play. Moving on to the floor and the ceiling for Zombie Scarlet Witch. By the way, we have Zombie Scarlet Witch on the low end, on the floor, being a bad late draw or not having any board space for the Horde. That would be kind of like one of the worst case scenarios, for your Zombie Scarlet Witch. You can't really get any value out of it. It's just a 3-2, which is not great. But I do think on average, you're going to be able to play 2 to 3 cards onto your Zombie Scarlet Witch, which gives your Horde either 4 to 6 power, which is another card just on the board. It is a 0-cost token card. That does get, 4 to 6 power. Of course, that is able to be Shadow Kinged, but it can't be Killmongered, which is nice. But you just have another card on the board with 4 to 6 power. But I think on the high end, you're able to play 5 to 7 different cards onto Zombie Scarlet Witch, which is possible. Playing Zombie Scarlet Witch on 3, let's say you played Merlin on 2, which means on 4, you could play out 2 skills as well as another card potentially onto your Zombie Scarlet Witch lane, which that would be 3 enablers there. Or you could even play like a Kitty Pryde and a 2-drop also onto your Zombie Scarlet Witch as well. That is 2 procs on turn 4. And then you, like I said, just 3 more procs later in the game is pretty simple and pretty easy to do there. Of course, this is like no counters happening at all whatsoever. You're able to, get the Horde stuff going crazy. But like 5 to 7 is plus 10 to plus 14 power because you get plus 2 each time you do play a card onto Zombie Scarlet Witch, which 14 power on a card's pretty good. Of course, you just have to play on the Scarlet Witch and, kind of have the tempo for that, which is pretty decent. But as we move on to a Headpool, and we talk about the floor and the ceiling for Headpool, I think on the low end for Headpool this is a bad late draw, or you don't have any cards to destroy this with, so it just kind of sits on the board at a 1-1, which is unfortunate. But I think more often than not, you're going to destroy this 1 to 2 times, meaning the cards in your hand get either plus 1 power or plus 2, meaning you've destroyed Headpool twice in order to have plus 2 onto their power. There's going to be some games where you actually get a crazy Headpool curve, especially if you have something like an X23, giving you that extra energy to be able to play Headpool out with your other combo cards. Getting this to go off 3 to 4 times, adding 3 to 4 power to the other cards in your hand, I think is really solid. Think about like Viv Vision going off like 1 to 2 times. You're like, okay, that's pretty good. But Viv going off 3 to 4 times can get pretty scary for your opponent. So that's something I think that's going to be really nice with Headpool there. And now we're going to move on to the decks I have for both cards. So the first deck I have here is going to be Token Hordes, which is using Viv Vision in this list. You could make this more of a Rocket and Groot, or do like that Mercury or like a Jeff, but I didn't want to have Mercury in both decks. I wanted to just kind of maybe start to see if we can do some Viv Vision things to also get some of that Mysterio value. You have token cards with the Hood. The Mysterios are tokens, Kate Bishop's arrows are tokens, and then the Horde, so that's what's discounting your Mockingbird. Of course, you have the extra energy you can produce either with Once and Future with Merlin, or with Hope Summers, being able to play cards onto that Hope Summers lane to be able to either get Sasquatch value to ramp stuff out, or be able to do other things later in the game as well. You do also have Misery in order to get some of these on reveals to go off again, whether that is to get another Hood, and maybe it's even to make, not a pim arrow, but make a basic arrow go off. Maybe you're like, well, I didn't fill this earlier, but I want to get another +2 power onto my horde. So I'm playing this misery onto my basic arrow to kind of alleviate some board space, as well as add, power to other sides of the board, which I like with Zombie Scarlet Witch here. Also Mysterio being played onto Zombie Scarlet Witch gives you some of that value to be able to add power to your horde. And then you can also Merlin out maybe the 0-powered Mysterio you're playing down as well in order to get some of that Sasquatch value, extra energy, and play another card onto Zombie Scarlet Witch to get that horde proc. The next deck we do have is more of a copium style list is what I have over here. We have Mercury, we have Grandmaster to be able to move some of these unrevealed cards away from where they are currently in order to proc the Zombie Scarlet Witch and also not take up as much board space. You also have cards that are going to be good for filling locations, whether that is the Elsa Bloodstone, the Human Torch First Steps, or the Thing First Steps as well. Some of these cards that will get extra value with the Elsa, as well as having full locations to be able to finish their abilities, because, Thing with a full location destroys a card with less power. Torch with a full location doubles Torch's power. So using that as kind of options there is kind of what my thought process was. You have Merlin to be able to potentially get rid of the hood, or maybe you're wanting to get some extra energy, so maybe you're trying to maybe get rid of Mercury potentially, instead of, keeping Mercury on your Zombie Scarlet Witch. Or you've had, other cards on the board you just need to get rid of, change locations, polymorph things, because you didn't get your combo piece the right way. Like, I think Merlin really is going to go hand in hand with Zombie Scarlet Witch, or just skills in general. Just the Merlin aspect of it, of course, is going to be, do I have another card here? Because I don't really want to get rid of the Zombie Scarlet Witch. Like, that is the main thing you're going to really run into with Merlin, which is maybe you want to do something more like an Agamotto, or maybe you want to do something like a Clea. Like, Clea could be also really solid in a style list, not like this one. We may build another one later this week with like a Marvel Boy Clea kind of thing. So then you also have that skill you can play down repeatedly in order to get Zombie Scarlet Witch value and also nuke cards on your opponent's side of the board. Moving on to the Headpool deck I'm starting with is going to be Head Loop, which is a Moira X or Mora X style Deadpool list. I'm not fully confident that it is going to be Mora instead of like a Kid Omega, and maybe having just Hulkbuster really lean into Deadpool being buffed. Your main win con here is going to be Deadpool getting value, but what I really like about Moira, since we're pouring so deep into the Deadpool style list here, if you can set up your cards, you destroy Moira first, and then you destroy Headpool. Headpool will also give power to the cards that did just get created by Moira as well. So you have that going for you as well. It is still, you're mainly focusing on just getting Deadpool as big as possible. You have Headpool for an enabler, Nico to be able to add power, Agony to add power, and you're just kind of ramping that out repeatedly to try and get some of that Deadpool value in general. There's a world, like I said, you maybe put Hulkbuster in here too, just to continue just to pour into that Deadpool style of play. But I think this will just take some testing to really see what the right place is for it. But Deadpool is your main combo card here, and you have Headpool to really just enable you to continue to go crazy. If you can destroy X23, also turn 5, you can play Null and Deadpool out, and you're destroying potentially a large variety of cards to also get that death value. So that's why I kind of like Moira also to give you just some extra options in case you don't get your Deadpool big enough. You can have maybe a variety of different Deadpool or a variety of different destroy cards to kind of go a little bit crazy. The next list we have over here is heavily inspired from Fudge's, his show deck. Well, just not say the first part of the word, but it is very similar to that, but more into just the destroy side, having Carnage in this as well. We still have the Lady Deathstrike, we have the Misery, Gladiator, Baron Zemo, Killmonger, Merlin. We're running Merlin in this list, we're running Death in this list, but we're having Headpool as a card that can be destroyed by either Carnage, Killmonger, or a Lady Deathstrike. We don't hate, actually, Headpool getting destroyed later in the game by a Lady Deathstrike, because that does enable us to get extra power on the cards in our hand, too. Of course, Lady Deathstrike to hit our cards and our opponent's cards. We also have ways to get extra energy with Merlin, destroying cards also with Misery to be able to get some potential value, too. Miserying, like, maybe even a Killmonger on like a hood lane or something too, be able to destroy Headpool again, to be able to get value elsewhere. Like, there's a variety of different ways I feel like you can set things up here to add power. Unknownness also with Iron Patriot, Baron Zemo, stealing our opponents have, getting Gladiator bigger with Headpool, so he destroys even a larger pool of cards because he has increased powers, kind of like my thought process there. So just a couple different outs. This is definitely the card I really want to test the most, going into this new season when it comes to the Season Pass and Super Premium Season Pass card, which also brings me to this over here. This is kind of what my idea is of Zombie Scarlet Witch. I think the ability is strong, especially for this archetype, because it's a brand new archetype. And I think, you know, being able to add 2 power potentially multiple times every single turn is really nice in order to get that for that token card on the board. Of course, you know, there's going to be matchups that are just going to be really bad for this, but that doesn't make this a bad card. It really just depends on what the meta is at and like what is going on when it comes to the meta itself. Maybe you start running a Cosmo or something, so like you can protect your horde from getting hit by like the Shadow King and stuff, and you really can focus on that lane's going to go up, and you focus on another lane, so your opponent kind of has to keep in mind, I'm either going to lose this lane or I have to contest this lane, which is why I do think this is pretty strong. Flexibility-wise, I think it's kind of flexible. Of course, the cards that can be played with it are fairly flexible, but I don't know necessarily if this archetype itself is the most flexible just yet. Adjusted, I have it a 3-star adjusted because I have a feeling if this does not perform up to the standards of Second Dinner, it is a Season Pass card. And Season Pass cards can get buffed. Vision got buffed in like the last OTA before, you know, we got this new season. And then we also, like, thinking back of, you know, Captain Carter. Captain Carter went from a 4 cost to a 3 cost because maybe sales weren't that great for, you know, the season pass. So then they changed that. So now she's actually playable. Captain Carter is actually like very solid. So I'm just kind of like thinking in that mind when it comes to cards being adjusted. Next, of course, we do have Headpool. I think Headpool can be incredibly strong. I think the unknown factor of your opponents not knowing what cards got buffed in your hand, of course, is really good. That's what we think about with Gwenpool. That's what we think about with Vision. And if you can keep that tempo really rolling and everything too, I think Headpool really enables you to kind of have that extra surprise factor. Of course, it is a very combo heavy card. Like in the sense you kind of need to destroy this like 2 to 3 times to really get the most value. Destroying it 1 time is good. You know, like getting 1 Viv proc is good, but you do have to destroy. Of course, you don't have to be winning location like you do with Viv, which I like that more, which allows you to kind of do some different things. You know, play order is going to matter with this card as well. But I think it's going to be pretty solid. Flexibility-wise, it's more just going to be just standard kind of destroy. Of course, we had that mill-style destroy list that I think it kind of can work well in. I had an idea of maybe doing some Dawkin kind of destroy stuff. Could potentially be cool, too, to get that value onto, you know, the base power of Dawkin. So whenever he, you know, gets the Murmasha Shard discarded, you know, you have that value to be able to get bigger Dawkin things. But I think that'll take a little bit more testing. And then I don't necessarily see this getting adjusted. I think this getting above a +1, making this +2, I think is just alpha window. I don't think that's something that they would do. Maybe they could make this a 1-2, but if Deadpool's still a 1-1, I don't see them changing Headpool. I don't know if this is a card that necessarily needs to get changed, but I could be wrong. Maybe it underperforms. They want to change it too. We'll see what happens there. But I do want to say Zombie Scarlet Witch is a buy. Of course, I think the Season Pass is always a must buy in order to really maximize your resources, in order to be able to stay collection complete or push towards being collection complete or be able to get more cards. So I do want to say I would get Zombie Scarlet Witch for that. Also, it's a brand new archetype, something that'd be really fun to test out. Of course, you are spending real dollars, so if you don't want to spend real dollars, don't spend real dollars. We are not forced to do so. It is just the best way to do so. And then, of course, we do have Headpool. I do think Headpool is a buy as well. You guys probably could have told that from the way I started the video. But you could buy this with a Super Premium Season Pass, which enables you to get Headpool and Zombie Scarlet Witch. And then you don't have to open a Series 5 Collector's Pack or Seasonal Pack, not Collector's Pack. So then you can get that and kind of save your tokens. You do get a variant as well. And that's going to be 20 USD, which also, if you guys are buying the Season Pass, buy the Season Pass on the web shop, because then you also get an Armanzola variant and you get a Series 5 Collector's Pack. So buy the cards on the Marvel Snap website itself. That gives you an additional potentially free card or additionally free tokens from buying the Season Pass on the web shop. So definitely do that if you are going to be buying the pass itself. Just keep that in mind. And then, as always, you guys gotta keep in mind, we are theory crafting. Every single time we make these types of videos, we do not entirely know how these cards are going to perform in the meta. There's OTAs that happen the weeks that these cards come out. Of course, we can, you know, base what we think is going to happen based on like the dev video and some general ideas and kind of like how these cards can potentially function and how the cards are kind of playing in the meta right now currently. But we don't exactly know, is it going to work the way we think, or is it going to be as good as we think? Which is why we make these videos, to give you guys a general idea where our head is at with what is going on. And I appreciate all the feedback that you guys give on the videos too. It really helps me kind of like be better at making these videos too. And at the end of the day, we are playing a video game. We are playing a digital card game. So get the cards you guys want to get. Maybe you completely disagree with what I'm saying about Headpool and think it's going to be the worst card ever. You don't have to get Headpool. You could just save your resources for something else you want to play. You know, maybe you love Jim Hammond, where I'm like, Jim Hammond's okay. But get Jim Hammond because you want to play it. That's the style of play that you want to play in Snap, then do it. You know, buy what you want to buy. If someone just gets mad at you or just says you shouldn't buy something because that's dumb and you should hate that, then like, they're just wrong. It is your video game. You get to play the way you want to play. Of course, you know, playing Airshim, I don't like if you play Airshim, but like, you spend resources on the card. Why not play it? You know, resources are so scarce in Snap. You got to make the most of them. Or like, cards are just going to sit on your shelf. You know, being collection complete is nice, but like, it doesn't really do anything else for you besides I have every card in the game. I mean, I guess I could build whatever deck I want, but like, I'm not playing every single deck. I'm only playing what I really enjoy playing. Like, I'm no longer collection complete because I realize, and I'm seeing more and more, how like scarce resources are getting, especially as we're getting more and more cards every single season. We're going to be pretty much like cut dry and bleed out of all of, you know, the resources we have because, you know, there are Series 5 cards that are mostly still releasing too. So like kind of keeping that in mind, and Series 4 cards. So like, it's getting super expensive just to be able to keep up. Of course, collection packs, you know, just packs in general help with that. But still, just saving that 1K doesn't always go the longest way possible. And, you know, cards do get adjusted too. Like, you know, good cards get nerfed, bad cards get buffed, good cards get buffed, bad cards get nerfed. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that just happened in general when it comes to, like, the way the meta is changing, and it changes every other week. You know, so like, that's good for this week, and then like in 2 weeks it changes to something else. So like, just kind of keep that in mind also when it comes to these cards. And with snap packs, cards are more likely to be able to be adjusted, as we've been seeing more and more of that. But I do want to say, guys, thank you once again for all the love and support on all the content recently. I know I had a bit of a break as we had like a bit of a rough week this past week, but I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you guys did enjoy the video, definitely feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. I knew this was a longer video because I'm going over 2 cards and kind of just want to be more thorough with it. But I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching the video. And it's been real. God bless, and Tucker out.